Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Today we're exposing Bernie Sanders once and for all. So Bernie Sanders, he's a Zionist war criminal. He's funded by J Street. He supports a two-state solution. He has ties to the Zionist terror cult Meretz. And he's all in all, he's a disgusting human being. Okay? So let's go into his political opinions. Okay? So, Senator Bernie Sanders. Here we are on this site called opensecrets.org. And it's funded by the Center for Responsive Politics. This is Bernie Sanders' profile. So here are his. So we went to contributors. We went to select a cycle. 2018. Grand total was $3,898,112. And we went to his top 100 contributors. And if you see here, and oh, by the way, it shows you their contributors from individuals and from PACs. And so let's say, for example, Google. From individuals, Bernie got $9,842 from individual employees of Google and zero from PACs. Okay, zero. See that? So the 9,842 he got was all from individual employees of Google, right? You got zero from any PACs. Now, you go to his 35th largest donor, J Street, and he got $5,000, all of which came from the PAC. Notice that he got $0 from individual employees of J Street. All the money he got from J Street came from the super PAC, okay? And if you go to his record, this is from ontheissues.org. I clicked on foreign policy, went to Bernie's profile. Actually, I typed in the search bar for Google, on the issues Bernie Sanders. And then I clicked on, and his profile popped up. Clicked on that link, clicked on his profile, Bernie Sanders, clicked on foreign policy, and here we are. Okay? So here he claims he's open to moving the embassy in the 48. And he also says that he is, he also says that he supports the Zionist terror cult's right to exist, but he doesn't support Shaitan Yahu. And he says he supports a two-state solution. So typical liberal Zionist weasel words, okay? Now here's what he said a couple weeks ago. This is in the Electronic Intifada, okay? Power Suits blog, this Power Suits section by Ali Abu Nima. So he was asked if he would move the embassy out of Quds, and Sanders said, and he was asked this by Bob Costa of the Washington Post, and at an event that was sponsored by Bank of America. So, he's in cahoots with the banks too, I bet. I wouldn't be surprised if he was also in cahoots with the bank. But that's a different story. Let's stick to the topic here. So Costa asked Sanders if he would move the embassy back. Sanders replied, probably not. It will be part of a broader discussion on how we bring peace to the region. I know how to bring peace to the region. Kick out all the Zionist settlers. All the settlers, no matter their ideology, kick them all out. That's how we got to do it. Okay, but here's what Sanders said. Sanders made a general commitment to engage in bringing people together and working out a solution that works for both sides, but offered no specifics. He did not repeat his pledge to U.S. military aid as leverage to force the Zionists to end its abuses of Palestinians. Sanders' failure sends a clear signal that he will reverse U.S. support for illegal Zionist actions and tells Zionists and the U.S. administrations that fait accompli they put in place will eventually be recognized and absorbed as irreversible conventional wisdom. Trump has already recognized the Zionist illegal annexation of the occupied Golan Heights Syrian territory the Zionists stole in a war of territorial expansion in 1967. The U.S. also appears to be heading towards recognizing a possible Zionist annexation of all or part of the occupied West Bank. U.S. officials have given open support to the Zionists' ethnic cleansing of occupied Quds Silwan neighborhood. This is part of the Zionists' effort to remake Quds' past, present, and future as exclusively Jewish by erasing its Muslim, Christian, Arab, and Palestinian histories and character. And the Zionist destruction of Palestinian homes is escalating sharply. On Monday, Zionist terror cult forces went on a rampaging destruction, demolishing 10 Palestinian-owned buildings containing dozens of apartments in the Quds area of town of Sur Baher. And you can follow this on Twitter. Go to Quds News Network, or Zina Al-Tahan posted a video on this too. A step backwards. Sanders and so many left-wingers in the United States, including myself, are opposing Bernie Sanders. So Steve Saleta, this is back in 2016, the first time Sanders ran for president. Steve Saleta says, "I won't vote for Bernie Sanders. His feeble possession on the Zionists is a serious progressive problem." He says, Bernie Sanders has run a smart and spirited campaign, even if he eventually loses the Democratic primary. His rise from virtually nowhere to threaten Hillary Clinton from the left offers much needed optimism in a time of dismal inequality. His ineffective invective against Wall Street is accurate and often courageous. He is the rare candidate who doesn't traffic in patriotic or religious platitudes, but I won't be voting for him. Sanders has long supported Zionist colonization, including the worst elements of his military occupation. I've had numerous arguments with friends about the extent and character of that support. Is it fair to call Sanders an adamant Zionist? I think it is. Personally, from a personal standpoint, I think it is. Is he a Zionist at all? Yes, I think he is. I think he's a very evil, genocidal, demonic Zionist. It doesn't even matter how bad he is really in the spectrum of U.S. politics. Knowing where kowtowing to the Zionists has long been a prerequisite for the presidency. We learn useful things about Sanders' positions on the Zionists in relation to his competition, but comparison is unnecessary. Sanders periodically comments on Palestine and the Zionist war crimes. Here's what we know. He's not a raging ideologue. He doesn't extol the Zionists. He hasn't kissed Shaitan Yahu's ring. He recently declined to call himself a Zionist last year. Last year, though, he yelled at pro-Palestine activists, and his platform on Palestine sounds agreeable but reproduces a failed status quo. Sanders also has a record of funding or rationalizing terrible violence. We shouldn't whisk away that record. It's a material example of Sanders' performance, and the senator has direct consequences on the lives of millions in the Middle East. Supporters of Sanders say he's not that bad, certainly not as bad as most of his contemporaries. This statement has no universal veracity. Sanders may not be bad according to a particular standard, but one cannot proffer this claim without subsuming Palestinians to an arbitrary pragmatism. Comments like, he's not that bad, or he's better than most, are value judgments that shouldn't be divorced from dynamic contexts of power and perspective. Those value judgments shift according to conviction, point of view in geography. Consider those who suffer the brutality of the Zionist war crimes Sanders has funded, and the Zionist occupation Sanders had funded. In what way would they make sense of the notion Sanders is worthy of support because he's better than other politicians who fund their suffering? When we're asked to be pragmatic, the first question should be pragmatic according to whose interest. The second question should be who determines the conditions of pragmatism. Just because sucking up to the Zionists is a compulsion for politicians doesn't mean it should be compulsory for voters. To say that we must accept the presidential candidate's adulation to Zionism for pragmatic reasons is to enforce the normative power of Zionism. And to dismiss Sanders' record on Zionist war, on the Zionist terror cult as unimportant is to devalue Palestinian life. See? So Abby Martin wrote a really crappy editorial. It was Robert Scheer, and he's a loser. The dude's a total loser. He's a liberal Zionist. He said, we could solve the Zionist-Palestine conflict tomorrow, okay? And who is that? Who the hell is that? There's Abby Martin and Mike Preisner. By the way, Mike Preisner's a war criminal, by the way. He committed war crimes in Iraq, and he was in the United States military and committed war crimes in Iraq. But here he is with his wife, Abby Martin, in Palestine with some Palestinian dude who looks like my cousin. I think they were in Gaza, so he might be related to me. Okay, so really crappy article. Basically, here's what he says. He says, Bernie Sanders has the best position on Palestine, Abby Martin tells Scheer. After the information I just gave you about Bernie Sanders, you're probably laughing your ass off, or you're probably fucking spitting in disgust because you know how shitty his record is. You know what I'm saying? Bernie Sanders has an atrocious record on Palestine. And to think that Abby Martin thinks that Bernie supports Palestine, she's out of her mind. She's batshit crazy. She's a liberal Zionist lunatic. And here's a quote from her. Here's a quote. Here's a quote from liberal Zionist Robert Scheer. As the three journalists point out, there's a high-profile Jewish American whose election in 2020 as a U.S. president could bring lasting peace to the Middle East. What? And Abby Martin has the audacity to claim that Bernie has the same position as Hamas. Come on, Abby. Come on, Abby. You lost your progressive card. You, Jimmy Dore, Nico House, all you motherfuckers lost your progressive card. Okay? All you annoying liberal hipsters lost your progressive card. Okay? Yeah, Robert Scheer's total Zionist tool. Steve Saleta, the guy that wrote the article in Salon there, you can follow him on Twitter. At Steve Saleta. He has something to say about that. He said, Abby Martin lionizes Bernie Sanders as Palestine's savior. I'll say it again. Western pundits need to quit instrumentalizing Palestinians in order to sanitize U.S. presidential campaigns. Destruction doesn't occur through the White House. Decolonization doesn't occur through the White House. And here's what he says. Here's the full interview. From Robert Scheer's soft Zionist interpolations to Abby Martin's tortured pandering to liberals. Preisner is there just to remind us again that he's serving it all. The entire thing is insultingly bad. What else does he say? Now, Dan Cohen responded and said, This is the least charitable reading of Abby's words possible. Seems fairly obvious she meant Sanders is the best position of the Democratic candidates, and her point was to show that Hamas is pragmatic rather than a cartoonish terror group it's portrayed as. And Steve Saleta said, I don't read for charitable purposes. I examine what people actually say, and the comment I cited abdicates the spirit of Palestine's national movement, which is decidedly more ambitious than putting a liberal Zionist in the White House. And actually, Steve Saleta wrote another article. Here we go. He's a smart dude, by the way. He used to be a college professor. He worked at the University of Illinois, and the Zionists. The Zionists had an issue with him, and they forced the University of Illinois to fire him, or he resigned, or something like that. I've long deployed what I consider a simple viewpoint about U.S. elections. If leftists choose to participate, they should do so. They should do it without making certain people disposable. In other words, don't commit to movements that require the downtrodden anywhere in the world to remain in states of hardship or dispossession. U.S. electoralism, by design, assiduously elides the needs and aspiration of communities whose freedom would disrupt imperial and colonial accumulation. Few groups are far more familiar with this culture of disposability than Palestinians. Many leftist advocates of electoralism conceptualize Palestinians not as colonized people in need of relief, but as impracticalities best relegated to the periphery of grown-up politics. Any talk about freeing Palestine is meaningless if the Westerners' gratification comes first. Support of Palestine certainly impedes electoral success. It's a serious problem, but a greater problem is the prioritization of electoral success at the expense of decolonial politics. Relief for Palestinians is coming, we're told. Just wait until this person with a history of selling out Palestine requires an obscene amount of power. The narrative is neither praxis nor analysis. It is petulant grotesquerie. No oppressed person wants to hear more nonsense from the white moderate. Purveyors of this grotesquerie have a plan. They'll educate the candidate. Again, I've heard that fucking platitude numerous times when I've called out liberals for their support of AOC or Bernie. This is the same bullshit they give me. I don't know why my fucking throat's dry. Sorry about that. But this plan has an unacknowledged problem, though. The candidate doesn't listen. When Palestinians express dismay, congressional aspirants or congresspeople who affirm ethnic cleansing directly or implicitly, it's hard to imagine a more vacuous, callous response than, "You need to educate them." It shifts the onus of moral negligence from elites articulating a fundamentally violent position onto the recipients of violence. Convincing allies to quit disposing of us in order to expedite their electoral fantasies is enough of a time suck without the burden of yelling into a void. Besides, politicians aren't ignorant. They function within a milieu that rewards meticulous selectivity. Anyone who runs for Congress or president will know that Palestine will come up, and the candidate will have spent plenty of time rehearsing answers and honing avoidance tactics, usually with the help of top professional Zionists. An unwillingness to speak isn't ignorance, and a halting presentation of safe talking points isn't naivete. They are textbook dissimulation, easy to recognize by anyone uninterested in excusing opportunism. Exhorting the colonized to enlighten agents of the state as a way to mitigate oppression betrays a severe misunderstanding of the U.S. political system. In case these eager teachers fail to explain how education is possible when they treat both criticism and inquiry as sacrilege. When education fails, other rationalization emerge. If he speaks on Palestine in favor of Palestine, he won't be elected. Adherents of conciliation proclaim, as if a Western politician's career is more important than a national community suffering an incalculable horror. Please remember, you're not choosing officers for a local DSA chapter. You're electing to empower a person who will vote on military budgets, foreign appropriations, and policy resolutions. That person will be in a direct position of authority vis-a-vis Palestinians and other victims of U.S. depravity. Capitalist politicians toil under obligations that don't cohere to social media thought bubbles. Wow. I proceed the assumption that no matter the context, disposal of colonized peoples is unacceptable. Arguments in favor of voting Democrat can't match the ethical and theoretical rigor of liberatory thinking on display in slums, ghettos, reservations, and refugee camps. Those arguments are boring, bromidic delusions of a self-obsessed culture. They are also achingly short on empathy. Let's return to Palestinians, since the norm is to avoid us when pretending to be serious. We continuously suffer the trauma of dehumanization, decades of land theft, murder, displacement, segregation, pollution, imprisonment, and home demolition, every awful deed of bipartisan U.S. procedure. Meanwhile, our oppressor expertly hoards a victim position, demanding that we assuage Zionist disquiet and affirm the sanctity of white life at the expense of our own survival. Bro, he is speaking my language. Steve Saleta is speaking my language. This is why we oppose Bernie Sanders. This is why I left the Democratic Party. This is why I ain't gonna vote for nobody. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna vote for nobody. Hell no. And you're full of it if you think I am, you know? Look, my great-grandma's Palestinian. My great-grandpa was Yemeni, okay? Bruh, I know the trauma of U.S. imperialism. I've never been to Khan Yunis. I've never been to McCalla City. Why? Because the U.S. is committing fucking war crimes, and I can't travel back home. I'm literally, the only places I can really travel are Seattle, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Minneapolis, and Fairbanks. Bruh. Those are literally the only places I can travel. I can't travel back home on a vacation to Khan Yunis to where my great grandma's family's from, or to McCalla City where my great grandpa's family's from. Bruh, I can't travel back to where my family's from. I can't reconnect with the places my family comes from because of the war crimes the U.S. and their proxies, i.e. the Zionists, the Brits, and the French and the Australians and the Turks and the Canadians are all committing. You know, I'm literally not able to travel back to the countries of origin where my grandma comes from, okay? And having Bernie Sanders as president ain't going to change nothing. And you want to know why? Because he's a Zionist. He's funded by J Street. He supports a two-state solution. He talks in cliches and platitudes. He's your typical idiotic politician. He's evil. And I bet you I wouldn't be surprised if he had connections to the New World Order. Okay? So Steve Saleta. I love Steve Saleta, man. Steve Saleta, he understands. He's Palestinian. I'm part Palestinian, so here we go. What was the other part? Oh, here we go. Here's the other part that really, really spoke to me, because it's like I've experienced people talking to me in this way too. Find me someone better is the most troublesome response to electoral recalcitrance. The statement is a telltale sign of intellectual captivity, wielded with uncanny confidence by people conditioned to accept mediocrity as some great satisfaction. And why is the mandate to find someone better rendered with such defiance, as if it decides the argument? The entire point of compassionate politics is finding someone better. Are you really so certain about nobody being better? Motherfucker, please. I know hundreds of people who are better. So do you. Millions of people we don't know are undoubtedly better as well. Let's not confuse familiarity with virtue or fame with integrity. Not everybody is a politician in the Democratic Party, and nobody is obliged to rep the state as a path to decency. If a desire to serve the government requires disposal of Palestine and other colonized nations, then it tells us less about the nature of the job than about the dubious provenance and congressional ambition. When you declare that nobody's better, you haven't scored a rhetorical victory. You've stated the case for rejecting electoral politics. Another one of my core beliefs is electoral politics a dead end. Glad to see that Steve Saleta agrees with me. So yeah, big shout out to Steve Saleta. Bro, if you watch this video, man, I hope you give it a like, because, I'm putting my time into this. A cognate of find me someone better is he is the best we have, which is equally asinine. He isn't the best we have. He's the best shitty bourgeoisie. He's the best a shitty bourgeoisie system affords us. The distinction is important. I have no quibble with anyone content to navigate the extant parameters of U.S. political life, but I've come to detest people who consider parameters sacrosanct. Insistent on the system's sanctity is a byproduct of naivete or isn't a byproduct of naivete or cynicism. To the contrary, it often arises from self-interest and reinforces an unctuous media culture, because celebrity politicians are little economies in themselves, with publications invested in their glory, a speaker's circuit promising honoraria and attention, and cadres of Lilliputian pundits busily restraining life forms larger than their puny imagination. This is another point I'd like to make. Bernie's got a cult. In other words, Bernie's got a cult. He's got all these media motherfuckers, all these media organizations and publications shilling for him on his, on his on his banana, just totally shilling for him and shit. And they don't give a crap about us. They don't give a crap about the poor person. I mean, Steve Saleta is using fancy talk. I don't use fancy talk because I'm a meathead produce clerk at a supermarket. But, all these, in other words, but I do know fancy talk, and I'm going to translate into meathead talk. Dude, Bernie's got all these media. Bernie makes moolah. He's making money for all these media corporations, for himself. He wrote a fucking book. He's got all these media organizations like The Intercept, Haaretz, and who else shills for Bernie? Truth Dig, The Empire Files, TYT. All these motherfuckers are shilling for Bernie. He's making moolah off of them. He only cares about making himself money. J Street, all his other donors, all the media outlets profiting off of him, they only care about the moolah, baby. He might as well fucking be the Jewish Lil Wayne and sing Young Moolah, baby, in his annoying ass accent, So that's basically what Steve is trying to tell us. But he uses fancy talk, but I translated it into meathead talk for you. How can you carry an honest debate with somebody about merits and limitations of a politician if the person you're debating has made a career of that politician's success? We're talking about all the shills that are shilling for him, Rather than policing limits of dissent, missionaries of pragmatism who insist that revolution must be voted into existence should explore correlations between U.S. accumulation, the substructure of Nordic-style welfare pretending to be socialism, and economic misery in the global south. In other words, Norway is aiding and abetting the Zionists in their ethnic cleansing of Palestine. Norway is the 8th largest weapons manufacturer in the world. Sweden's committing war crimes in Iraq, Armenia, Somalia, Eritrea, Sudan, Yemen, etc., etc. What's it? BAE Systems, that's a Danish company, Danish-British co-venture. They're committing war crimes in Palestine. So all these squareheads, all these northern European countries like Norway, Sweden, that kind of thing, they're all, committing war crimes in Africa, Asia, the Balkans, the Caucasus, the Caribbean, and they're profiting massively. They're committing war crimes on Yupik and Gwich'in land as well, and in Nupiaq land as well, and they're all making katir faluz, loads and loads of money off of that. So Bernie's whole ideology is bullshit, and Steve Salate is calling it bullshit. I'm calling it bullshit. Everybody on the left, the authentic left, not the fake Intercept, TYT, applesauce, Grace Baldridge left, we're all calling it what it is. Bullshit, okay? It's one thing to vote concession as a concession to limited possibilities or even a principled intervention, but mythologizing a succession over branded ciphers invariably diminishes a world of people struggling for freedom. The politicians who supposedly represent the best can ostensibly be made better. For another appeal to electoralism is the mandate that we constituents and concerned citizens need to move Democrats left. This mandate is nonsensical in two ways. Those who proffer it are usually insincere. They have no intention of pressuring their chosen leadership in any meaningful way, though they'll make time to berate anyone who tries. Second, expecting a Democrat with grand aspirations to move left is like waiting for corporations to socialize their assets. Decades of history show us that the Democratic Party movement overwhelmingly happens in the other direction. Move them left sounds like has a more proactive approach. Hold their feet to the fire sounds like a good plan, but rarely evolves from a slogan to an event. How can this valuable initiative occur if approach, holding to the feet to the fire component of the strategy is met with sanctimonious howling about purism and immaturity. When activists and intellectuals conceptualize a candidacy as imperative, dissent isn't an option. We either conform or initiate social death. While it's rare to see elected officials move left, we regularly see their fans in risible efforts to soft pedal capitulation inching to the center. Yeah, so that's another good point. I'm going to translate it into supermarket meathead terms. You ain't going to move them to the left. They're invested to being right wing, okay? All these idiots online tell them, we're going to move this Bernie Sanders to the left and whatnot. You ain't going to move him to the left. He sold out to J Street. He's a Zionist. You ain't going to move him to the left. He only is going to move right wing, okay? Not even center, right wing. And you Bernie stands, they're like, dude, we're going to move him left. He needs to move left. Dude, we just stated electoral politics is a dead end. How are you going to move him to the left if electoral politics is a dead end, huh? He always moves to the right. It's a pattern we've seen over and over again. We saw it with Bosnia. We saw it with the loopholes in the Yemen bill. We saw it with Lebanon, Iraq, all this kind of stuff. He only moves to the right. Of course. So that's a good article, man. I don't know. Should I keep reading? Man, if you want to check it out, stevesaleta.com/find me someone better. Y'all know what it is. I might read a little bit more. Of course, the recalcitrant hear regularly, there's no such thing as a perfect candidate. No line better illuminates the electoral discourse in the United States. Marxist, anarchist, and decolonial traditions don't frame aversion to voting Democrat as a quest for individual perfection, nor do those traditions covet ideal representation. The notion of a perfect candidate exists to minimize Inhumane's level of atrociousness and is used in equal measure by centrist Democrats and their Bernie wing enemies. Both groups also share a talent for waving away centuries of revolutionary thought. I have a very left-wing ideology that is, I'm in some ways a theocrat. I really, I'm a Muslim personally, okay? But I have a very decolonial left-wing perspective. Like, my left-wing perspective is influenced by groups like Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Ansarullah movement, Hamas, that kind of thing, the Jordanian Communist Party. So I have a very left-wing ideology, and people scream at me, there's no such thing as a left-wing candidate. And I hear this from Hillary shills and Bernie stands all the time. So I agree with Steve on that, man. But, dude, he is speaking my language, man. But yeah, I'm almost running out of time on this segment. So I might have to cut it short. But, dude, check out the homie Steve Saleta. Smart dude. You will love him. He is the OG of this kind of thing, this kind of journalism thing. I ain't I ain't a professional at it. I might sound like a meathead that works at a produce department in a supermarket, because I am, okay? But, and I read pretty good. My English ain't the best. I only did 1 year of college and I dropped out because it was a shithole and a waste of my time. But, dude, this speaks my language, bro. I'm gonna cut the segment short because I got to get to the masjid pretty soon. I walk, so but dude, this is so true. Bernie Sanders is a Zionist shill. He's funded by J Street. He supports a two-state solution. And if you support him, you're a Zionist shill. So whose side do you want to take? You want to take Bernie Sanders' side, or you want to take my side? The side of or Steve Saleta's side, the side of the left wing. Yeah, so, dude, check out the rest of the article, stevesaleta.com/find me a better person. I think it's called Find Me a Better Person, Find Me a Better Candidate, something like that. Look it up. You'll love it. You'll love my channel. So you love my channel too, so give it a like, subscribe, post notifications. I'm trying to upload more regularly. I've been busy with work. I've been just taking a little personal break. But now I'm back, alhamdulillah. So now you know what it is. Like, subscribe, notifications. And Mansour is out here. Peace.